The in-laws. My in-laws' house was acquired after their grandma died. Grandma left the house for my father-in-law. My girlfriend has lived in the house since she was 7 years young. The very first time I went over there, I noticed that all the cabinets were tied shut. I asked my girlfriend why all the cabinets were closed off and tied down. She says, because my grandma likes to open them since she knows my dad hates it. I then noticed that the cabinets are always opened up if they are not closed and tied down. I eventually argued that their house has settled and is slightly slanted, which in turn causes the cabinet doors to open due to gravity. Unbeknownst to me, that thought changed quickly after this situation. On a breezy summer day, we were all eating outside on the picnic table. The sun was already setting on the horizon, and for some reason, I turned to look inside the house. I was staring through a window. My girlfriend saw me gazing inside and asked what I was looking at. I looked at her and replied, "Is there someone in your house?" She responds with, "No, we are all out here." I nervously whispered to her that there is a dark shadow at that window every few minutes. She asked me to point out the exact window, and so I did. "Well, you are probably seeing my grandma. She always watches us eat from there." What the heck, really? I got chills down my spine and politely remained quiet, trying to not cause a ruckus. It was like one of those phenomena where you see it out of the corner of your eye, look up, and it's gone. You tell yourself you are just seeing things, but I suppose that's not the case. The lake. In the mid-1980s, there was a young gentleman in his 20s that was driving home from the lake. It was late at night in the spring and it was raining. Due to the conditions, he was driving cautiously and slowly because his headlights did not provide an ideal beam to see clearly. Out from the right side of his vehicle, near the dark smoky ditch, he sees a girl walking down the mountain road. He slows down as he sees her and pulls over. The girl was dressed in formal attire, almost like she left a dance or a wedding, and seemed fairly upset. The young gentleman decided to give her a ride, assuming she was at an event at the lodge, which was a few miles back, and simply got into an argument with her boyfriend. He asked her if she needed a ride, and she agreed, giving the young gentleman directions to her house. Throughout the rest of the winding ride home, the only other words said were him offering her his coat since she was cold. It was eerily quiet. He finally gets her home and watches her make her way inside. At this point, he realizes she took his coat with her, but not wanting to inconvenience her, he decides to wait a few days before going back to retrieve it. A few days pass, and he shows back up at the residence he dropped her off at. He knocks on the door, and an old man answers. Assuming this was her dad or grandpa, he asked to see the girl because he gave her a ride home the other night and she kept his coat. The old man looks confused and says, she doesn't live here." "Well, I'm not crazy," the guy says. "I dropped her off here the other night." The old man replies, "She was my granddaughter, but she was murdered by her prom date at the lodge by the lake over 30 years ago. If you don't believe me, I will show you her grave." The young man agreed to see her grave, so they head over to the cemetery where she was buried. As the old man and the young gentleman were walking to her grave, they find his jacket folded on top of her gravestone.